Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Emily Lambert and Robert Earley? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the crime, then offer my analysis. Emily Rebecca Lambert was born on November 26, 1983, and lived in Garland, Texas. She married, had 2 children, and divorced. Emily worked as a 3rd grade school teacher. She taught math and science. Toward the end of 2013, Emily started dating a man named Robert Earley. He ended up finding a job on an oil rig in Carlsbad, New Mexico. This is about 473 miles west of Garland, Texas. Robert stayed at a hotel called the Stevens Inn as he continued to look for a permanent place to live. Now moving to the timeline of the crime. On March 1, 2014, 30-year-old Emily was visiting 33-year-old Robert at his hotel in Carlsbad, New Mexico. The couple was in the early stages of their relationship and could not stand to be apart for too long. They had not seen each other for 2 weeks and wanted to spend the weekend together. As they were in the hotel bar, called the Blue Cactus Lounge, Emily became angry for reasons that are not clear. Robert would later say that she was drinking and attracting a lot of attention from men. It sounds like Robert became jealous and may have confronted Emily. Emily left the bar at about 11:30 p.m. and went back to the hotel room. Robert left the bar a few minutes later, but could not get into the room because Emily would not open the door for him. At 11:54 p.m., Robert obtained another key card for the room from the front desk. After Robert entered the room, he and Emily argued. Part of the argument was recorded in a voicemail message. Emily said, "Never, never again, get away from me, go away." Robert said, "Just be calm." He would later claim that Emily wanted to drive back to Garland, Texas, while intoxicated. Emily was in the room gathering her belongings, so Robert may have been telling the truth about that part. At this point, according to Robert, Emily attacked him by biting him. Robert responded by hitting Emily. When she dropped to the ground, he kicked her in the mouth. He continued kicking her, which rendered her unconscious. Instead of calling for help, Robert decided that he wanted to escape responsibility for his behavior. He placed Emily in her vehicle and drove almost 12 miles to an area behind a private residence on Potash Mines Road. Robert noticed that Emily was still breathing, therefore he removed an air pump from the vehicle and struck Emily several times with it. The air pump was described as one that might be used to inflate bicycle tires. Robert wrapped a rope around Emily's neck and attached the other end of the rope to the vehicle by closing it in a rear door. Robert dragged Emily behind her vehicle for about 500 feet and dumped her behind a barn. An autopsy would later show that Emily was alive when being dragged by the vehicle. After stopping the vehicle, Robert hit Emily with a bar a couple of times. Emily did not survive the attack. Robert returned to the Stevens Inn, disposing of the bar, the air pump, and some of Emily's clothes on the way. He went to sleep in his hotel room. When he woke up the next morning, he returned to the scene of the murder and disposed of the rope. Later that morning, Robert called 911 and reported Emily missing. When the police responded to the hotel to take a report from Robert, he told them that he and Emily had a verbal altercation the night before in the Blue Cactus Lounge. Emily became upset and left with another man. The next day, the police spoke to Robert again. He repeated his claim that he argued with Emily and she left with another man. He agreed to go to the police station for an interview. Here, his story changed. Now he said that he didn't actually see Emily leave with another man. Robert agreed to take a polygraph, which is a so-called lie detector test. Not surprisingly, the police told Robert that he failed the polygraph, which of course is not possible. Polygraphs are nothing but pseudoscientific nonsense. The police easily manipulated Robert with this tactic. he felt compelled to change his story. Here is the new story that Robert supplied. When Emily left the bar, she climbed into a white pickup truck with a large man wearing a cowboy hat. Robert followed the pickup truck to a house. When the vehicles came to a stop, the unidentified pickup truck driver approached Robert with a pipe. Emily jumped between this unidentified man and Robert, which led to the man striking her in the head with the pipe. Robert climbed back into his vehicle and left the area because he was afraid the mystery man would retrieve a firearm. He told the police that the house was on Potash Mines Road. The police went there and found Emily's body. Robert was interviewed again and offered a new version of events. In this story, there was no inaccurate, pipe-wielding, potential gun-possessing mystery cowboy. Robert admitted he fabricated that character, and he was actually the killer. Robert confessed to kicking Emily in the head multiple times, taking her to the house, beating her with an air pump, dragging her body with a rope, and hitting her with a pipe. Robert Earley was charged with first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, and kidnapping. On May 15, 2015, he was convicted of all charges and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. There will be no early release for Robert Earley. He found an unconventional way of accomplishing early retirement. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Robert claimed that the reason he struck Emily with the pipe after dragging her with the rope is because he did not want her to suffer. He was afraid that she would freeze to death and wanted to put her out of her misery. Robert said he went back to the scene of the murder to see if she was still alive, even though, in reality, he had to have known she was dead. He made sure that she was dead before leaving the first time. It appears as though Robert wanted to be viewed as a compassionate person, like he may have brutally attacked Emily in multiple ways, but he really wasn't a bad guy. In his mind, he mercifully beat her to death with a pipe. Item number 2. In attacks involving a man beating a woman to death, impulsivity is at least partially to blame in almost every instance. Initially, that seemed to be what happened here. Robert went into a rage and struck Emily. He told the police that he just lost it. After his initial attack, however, the crime did not appear to be driven by impulsivity. When Robert realized that Emily was still alive, he beat her with an air pump, dragged her with a rope, and beat her with a pipe. Robert was particularly cold, sadistic, and callous. It was almost like he was in a never-ending rage. Whatever argument occurred between them activated some type of tremendous hostility that Robert had been suppressing. Perhaps when Emily flirted with other men, it tapped into Robert's deep insecurity. It's reasonable to believe that Robert had stockpiled animosity in advance. Robert's consumption of alcohol caused him to be disinhibited, which brought that rage even closer to the surface. He was like a volcano waiting to erupt. Robert expended a tremendous amount of energy to kill Emily, and his behavior was consistent with overkill. Item number 3. After Robert attacked Emily, but before he killed her, he could have made an argument for self-defense. He was alone with Emily in their hotel room. She was intoxicated. They were arguing, but nothing physical had occurred yet, and she decided to bite him. She committed an assault. He responded by striking her. It's uncertain if Robert was telling the truth about Emily biting him, but if he was, maybe he could have avoided prison by walking away at that moment. Item number 4. Some people believe that Robert was guilty of second-degree murder or even manslaughter as opposed to first-degree murder. If Emily had died in the hotel room, I think a good case could have been made for manslaughter. Again, she allegedly provoked him physically. He overreacted, but it was not premeditated. The problem for Robert is that he transported Emily to a remote area and murdered her there. When he realized that she was still alive, he should have called for help immediately. Instead, he doubled down on his attack and killed her. When Robert initially attacked Emily, he may have acted in the heat of the moment. When he actually killed her, it was premeditated. Item number 5. Some of the jury members in this case had deep concerns about the alcohol use involved. It was not explicitly stated, but there is the sense they recognized how this murder would not have occurred without alcohol. This is probably true. Clearly, Robert had a lot of anger built up, but I think it was the alcohol that allowed that anger to be unleashed. Item number 6. Is there anything that Emily could have done to protect herself against Robert, or was this crime unavoidable? Emily did not find herself in an ideal situation. She was far away from home, intoxicated, and spending time with a man she only knew for 4 months. My guess is that Robert did something to Emily in the bar that deeply offended her. Maybe he struck her there or made some type of really insulting comment. Whatever he did, it led to her using the phrase, "never again." It's clear that Emily wanted to leave the hotel to get away from Robert. She was breaking up with him. Their relationship had come to a conclusion. Permanently separating is always a dangerous point in a romantic relationship, especially when alcohol is involved. If Robert was going to be violent, it would be when he was intoxicated and learning that Emily was leaving him for good. Emily chose to bite him as she was collecting her belongings. This was not a good strategy to remain safe. A better strategy would have been to appease Robert by not making any statements about whether she was going to leave him or not. She could have then surreptitiously called for a ride to another hotel and stayed there until she became sober. At that point, she could have driven back to Garland, Texas, and informed Robert that their relationship was over. She could have done this in a way that did not involve in-person contact. This was really about timing. Emily selected a dangerous time to introduce unsettling news. In addition, she desired a measure of revenge against Robert, which is probably why she attacked him first. Even if Robert was lying and Emily never attacked him, Emily probably could have survived using a different strategy. Emily learned something valuable about Robert that night and decided to act on that news quickly. A slower approach would have had a better chance of success. Even though Emily may have been able to protect herself better, Robert is to blame for what happened. A rage was burning inside of Robert, just waiting for a chance to get loose. Unfortunately for Emily, she had no way to know about Robert's potential for violence because there were insufficient early indicators. Those are my thoughts on the case of Emily Lambert and Robert Earley. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.